Punchlines, Inside Boxing's Mental Fight, The Hardest Fight Begins When the Gloves Come Off. By Alan T. Cunningham, narrated by Eric Elam. Chapter 1, The Tremor. Atlanta, 1996. The Olympic Stadium glows in television light. Billions of eyes across the world are fixed on the final moments of the torch relay. When the camera cuts to the last figure in the chain, the audience gasps Muhammad Ali, the most famous fighter who ever lived, standing alone, torch in hand. He lifts it slowly, painfully, his arms shaking from the tremors of Parkinson's disease. The fire flickers against the night sky. It is an image at once triumphant and also tragic, the greatest boxer of the 20th century reduced to a frail, trembling man. Ali had once floated like a butterfly, stung like a bee. Now his body betrays him. Years of punishment, 15-round wars with Joe Frazier, the rope-a-dope against George Foreman, the bruising late-career fights he should never have taken, have left their mark. Medical textbooks would later confirm what fight fans had long whispered: Ali was living evidence of a condition once called punch-drunk syndrome. Punch-drunk. The phrase was first coined in 1928 by Dr. Harrison Martland, a New Jersey pathologist who studied former boxers staggering around gyms and taverns, unable to speak clearly, often prone to sudden rages. He called it dementia pugilistica. It was a disease of fighters: slurred speech, tremors, poor coordination, cognitive decline, personality changes. The name was crude but accurate, as boxers looked drunk long after they had stopped drinking. The cause was not alcohol but trauma, thousands upon thousands of punches rattling the brain inside the skull. For decades, boxing dismissed it as folklore. Trainers spoke of getting your bell rung or taking too many shots, but the culture rarely acknowledged long-term damage. Fighters were expected to endure. To quit was shameful, to show weakness, unthinkable. Ali, of course, was different. He was the most graceful, the fastest heavyweight of all time. Surely someone like him, fans thought, would not pay the price. But no footwork, no jab, no charisma could protect him from biology. His brain, like every fighter's, was flesh. Flesh does not forget. The price of greatness. By the mid-1980s, even before his retirement, Ali was showing signs of decline. He slurred words in interviews. He shuffled his feet where once he had danced. Doctors warned him to stop fighting, but boxing is a sport that punishes exit. The allure of one more payday, one more moment under the lights, drew him back into the ring. When Ali fought Larry Holmes in 1980, it was a massacre. Holmes, who had once been Ali's sparring partner, begged the referee to stop it. "I was hitting him with punches, real punches," Holmes said, "and I knew he didn't have it anymore." Ali absorbed round after round of punishment, each blow accelerating the neurological decline that would become evident in the years ahead. By the time he lit the Olympic torch, Ali's greatness had become a paradox. He was revered as a global icon because of what he once was and pitted because of what boxing had taken from him. Not just Ali. Ali was not unique. He was simply the most visible. Behind him stood a line of fighters whose names are less well known but whose suffering was just as real. Jerry Quarry, once a heavyweight contender, spent his final years unable to recognize family members. Meldrick Taylor, who won Olympic gold at 17 and engaged in a brutal war with Julio Cesar Chavez in 1990, now speaks with a halting, broken cadence, his mind never fully recovered from the punishment. British fighter Johnny Owen, nicknamed the Matchstick Man, collapsed in the ring in Los Angeles in 1980 and never woke up. Gerald McClellan, a devastating puncher from Detroit, was left permanently blind and brain-damaged after a fight with Nigel Benn in 1995. These are not isolated tragedies. They are part of the sport's DNA. The brain's hidden damage. Medical science has caught up with what Martland first noticed nearly a century ago. The modern term is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a degenerative brain disease caused by repeated head trauma. Under a microscope, the brains of former fighters show abnormal tau protein buildup, a slow, creeping pathology that kills brain cells and erodes memory, mood, and motor function. Unlike a broken bone, the damage is invisible in the moment. A fighter may look fine after a fight, give a coherent interview, walk to the locker room. But the brain, shaken inside the skull by every punch, is accumulating microscopic scars. And unlike a sprain or cut, the brain does not heal. Every blow adds up. Hundreds of rounds in sparring sessions, dozens of professional fights, thousands of punches, the math is merciless. The silence of the sport. Boxing has always existed in this tension. Fans celebrate its artistry, its courage, its spectacle. Fighters are immortalized for their toughness, their ability to absorb punishment and keep coming forward. But that same quality, the willingness to take blows, is what destroys them. Within the sport, this has long been the unspoken rule: you don't talk about the damage. To speak openly is to betray the code of toughness. Trainers tell fighters to shake it off. Promoters avoid the subject. Fans cheer knockouts without considering the cost. Ali lighting the torch in Atlanta broke that silence in a way no doctor or journalist could. His body was undeniable proof. The tremor was visible, broadcast worldwide. It was the price of greatness, paid in public. Setting the stage. This book begins with Ali because he represents both the dream and the nightmare of boxing. He was adored, immortalized, revered. He was also ruined. His life embodies the contradiction at the heart of the sport. The very qualities that make fighters legends are the same ones that destroy them. In the chapters that follow, we will trace this contradiction through the lives of other greats: Ricky Hatton, Tyson Fury, Frank Bruno, Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank, Mike Tyson, and through the eyes of doctors, families, and the fighters themselves. We will examine the medical science that now explains what Martland first glimpsed in 1928. We will explore the culture of silence that keeps fighters from seeking help. We will confront the collapse of purpose that comes when the roar of the crowd fades, and a fighter is left alone with the damage he has carried out of the ring. The story begins with a tremor, but it does not end there. It stretches across decades, across continents, across men whose names still fill arenas. This is their story, and it is the story of a sport that both exalts and destroys. Chapter 2: The Boys from Britain. A nation of fighters. Britain has always had a complicated love affair with boxing. From smoke-filled working men's clubs to sold-out arenas in Manchester, London, and Cardiff, the sport has thrived as both entertainment and escape. For generations, it was the poor man's pathway to glory, a way out of factories, shipyards, and council estates. In the 1980s and 1990s, a new generation of British fighters rose to prominence, their names etched into the nation's sporting consciousness: Frank Bruno, Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank, Ricky Hatton, Lennox Lewis. They were household names not only for their fights but for their personalities, their flaws, their ability to reflect the grit and humor of the British public. But behind every sold-out arena and tabloid headline lay the same danger that haunted Ali. Britain, too, has its ghosts. Frank Bruno, the gentle giant. Frank Bruno was beloved in a way few heavyweights ever were. His booming laugh, his "know what I mean" airy catchphrases, his warmth made him more than a fighter, he was a national treasure. Children mimicked his voice on playgrounds, comedians built careers on imitating him. But in the ring, Bruno's story was one of heartbreak and perseverance. He fought Mike Tyson twice, Lennox Lewis once, and suffered crushing defeats. He finally captured the WBC heavyweight title in 1995, beating Oliver McCall on points. The moment brought Wembley Stadium to its feet. For once, the nearly man had become the champion. Yet the glory was short-lived. Within months, Bruno lost the belt in a rematch with Tyson, battered and stopped in the third round. Out of the ring, his battles were no longer with opponents but with himself. Bruno would later be sectioned under the Mental Health Act, diagnosed with bipolar disorder. His breakdowns were tabloid fodder, cruel headlines mocking the man who had once carried the pride of a nation. Many who knew him quietly wondered, how much of Bruno's mental illness was inherited, and how much was inflicted, not by genetics, but by the years of punches absorbed in sparring rings and under stadium lights. Nigel Benn, the Dark Destroyer. Where Bruno was lovable, Nigel Benn was ferocious. He fought as though possessed, his nickname, the Dark Destroyer, no exaggeration. Benn's wars with Chris Eubank defined an era. Their first clash in 1990 ended in tragedy and drama, Eubank rising from the brink of defeat to knock Benn out in the ninth. Their rematch in 1993 filled Old Trafford with more than 40,000 fans and ended in a draw, both men bloodied but unbowed. Benn's most haunting night, however, came not against Eubank but against Gerald McClellan in 1995. It was a fight that tested the limits of human endurance. Knocked down twice early, Benn somehow stormed back, battering McClellan until the American collapsed, never to fully recover. McClellan was left blind, brain damaged, and dependent on lifelong care. Benn was never the same. He admitted years later that the victory felt like a defeat. He had won the fight but carried the guilt for life. Chris Eubank, the showman's burden. Chris Eubank was unlike any British fighter before him. He entered arenas to the strains of Tina Turner's Simply the Best, dressed in fine suits, speaking in an aristocratic drawl. He was both admired and ridiculed, the pantomime villain of British boxing. But behind the showmanship lay the same punishment. Eubank absorbed terrible shots in his career, including those against Benn, Michael Watson, and Carl Thompson. The Watson fight in 1991 changed British boxing forever. Watson collapsed in the ring after their rematch, suffering severe brain damage. Eubank, victorious yet devastated, was haunted. He later admitted that he considered retiring immediately, unable to reconcile his success with Watson's suffering. Ricky Hatton, the people's champ. A decade later, Ricky Hatton carried the torch for Britain. The hitman from Manchester was the everyman hero, beer in hand, belly chants echoing from the terraces, a fighter who looked like he could have been your mate from the pub. His rise was meteoric. He beat Kostya Tsayu in 2005, sending shockwaves through the sport, and drew tens of thousands of fans wherever he went. But Hatton, too, paid the cost. Knocked out brutally by Floyd Mayweather in 2007 and Manny Pacquiao in 2009, he spiraled into depression, alcoholism, and cocaine abuse. He later admitted to multiple suicide attempts, saved only by the intervention of loved ones. When the lights go out, Hatton said, you're left alone. That's when the punches you took come back to haunt you. Sadly, Ricky Hatton died in September 2025. Police said the death was not being treated as suspicious. His long struggles with depression and substance abuse have been widely recounted in media. A pattern emerges. From Bruno to Hatton, from Benn to Eubank, the story is consistent, the glory fades, the damage remains. Some suffer physically, others mentally. Many struggle to adjust to life outside the ropes. The arena's empty, the crowds vanish, and the fighter is left with his thoughts, his scars, and the echoes of punches absorbed years before. Ali's tremor in Atlanta was not an American tragedy alone. It was a universal one. And in Britain, the story of its champions is proof, no fighter escapes unscathed. Chapter 3, The Voices. When the crowd goes silent. For a fighter, the ring is a world of extremes. The lights are blinding. The crowd is deafening. Every punch, every cheer, every gasp becomes a part of the body's rhythm. But the moment the bell rings for the last time, that world disappears. And what remains is silence, the long, unrelenting silence of a brain that has been shaken more than it should have been. Fighters describe it differently, but the patterns are the same: tremors, memory gaps, sleepless nights, mood swings, and the slow erosion of identity. Ricky Hatton, you're left alone. Ricky Hatton, the hitman from Manchester, remembers the emptiness after his fights with Mayweather and Pacquiao. The roar goes quiet, and suddenly you're just there. No lights, no cheers. You start hearing the punches in your head, not the ones you threw, but the ones you took. It's funny, you spend your whole life taking hits, and the hits that hurt most aren't in the ring. They're in your mind. And there's no corner man to stop them. Hatton's words resonate with countless fighters who have experienced the aftermath of glory, a kind of delayed reckoning. Frank Bruno, the battle outside the ring. Frank Bruno, who carried the hopes of a nation, found his hardest fights occurred away from the crowd. People think boxing is just about throwing punches. But it's what happens after, when you're walking home from the gym or sitting alone in your flat. That's when the real fight begins. It doesn't matter how many titles you've held. Your body remembers. Your mind remembers. And sometimes, your family pays the price. Bruno's struggle with bipolar disorder and mental health challenges is inseparable from the years of physical trauma. His story underscores a grim truth: even the most beloved champions are not immune to the sport's hidden cost. Nigel Benn, guilt never leaves you. Nigel Benn speaks with quiet intensity about the fight that changed him forever, the night Gerald McClellan was left brain damaged. I won the fight. I should have been celebrating. But all I felt was guilt. Every punch I threw after that moment felt heavier. It stays with you, long after the crowd has gone home. You wonder if you did the right thing. If anyone could have done anything differently. And the truth is, the answer doesn't come. You just live with it. For Ben, the physical battles were just one layer, the psychological toll was endless. Chris Eubank, the mask you wear. Chris Eubank, ever the showman, describes the mask a fighter must wear in the ring, in interviews, in life. You can't show fear. You can't show weakness. People expect you to be invincible. But behind the suit, behind the arrogance, you're vulnerable. Every shot you've taken comes back, slowly. And you learn the hard way, no one really sees it until it's too late. Eubank's persona, so theatrical to the outside world, concealed the silent accumulation of damage within. The shared truth. Despite differences in style, personality, or era, one truth connects all these men: boxing leaves its mark. And it is not just in the bruises or the broken bones. It is in the tremors, the memory lapses, the anxiety, the depression, the sleepless nights, the moments of isolation. Doctors now call it CTE, but fighters know it as something more intimate: the invisible tally of punches that never stops counting. Ali's tremor in Atlanta was a warning visible to the world. For these men, the warning was felt in private, in the quiet moments after the roar, when the applause fades and only the echoes remain. The price of pride. The pride of a fighter, the courage, the determination, the refusal to quit is both the fuel of their glory and the architect of their suffering. The very qualities that make them champions are also the ones that put them at risk. You take the hits, Hatton said. You get up, again and again. And when you finally can't get up anymore, you realize the fight never really ends. It's just changed form. And that's the hardest punch of all. In the stories of Hatton, Bruno, Benn, and Eubank, the pattern is clear. Boxing may create heroes, but it also leaves ghosts. The voices in this chapter are those of men who lived the glory and now live the aftermath, the tremors, the memories, the guilt, and the quiet moments that reveal the sport's human cost. Chapter 4: The Science of the Knockout. Inside the fighter's brain. The brain is a remarkable organ, soft, gelatinous, and astonishingly resilient. But it is also fragile. Every time a fighter absorbs a punch, the brain rattles inside the skull, twisting, stretching, and sometimes tearing microscopic fibers. Most of the time, the damage is invisible. A fighter may smile, joke, and walk to the locker room as if nothing happened. But beneath the surface, the injury accumulates. Modern science calls this chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE. It is the long-term result of repeated head trauma, the invisible toll of a lifetime of punches. Tau and the ticking clock. Under a microscope, the brains of affected fighters reveal deposits of tau protein, a sticky substance that interferes with normal brain function. Over time, tau builds up, killing neurons and disrupting communication between cells. The result is a creeping pathology: memory loss, tremors, impaired judgment, mood swings, and in some cases, aggression or depression. It's not a sudden collapse, says Dr. Annette Carlson, a neurologist specializing in sports-related brain injury. It's gradual. A fighter may be sharp and alert at 30, 40, 50. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, the symptoms manifest. The clock has been ticking for decades, and the brain finally signals that it has had enough. The lessons of history. Ali, Bruno, Hatton, Benn, Eubank, their stories are case studies in the slow, cumulative effects of trauma. Decades of punches, thousands of rounds, repeated concussions, each one adding to the invisible ledger inside their heads. Science has confirmed what trainers and fighters long suspected: the sport that exalts toughness also endangers longevity. Medical researchers now have tools to detect early signs of damage. Imaging technology can reveal microbleeds and structural changes. Cognitive testing can identify subtle declines before they become catastrophic. The problem, however, is culture. A culture resistant to change. Boxing has always celebrated resilience. Fighters are praised for taking punishment, standing tall, refusing to quit. To walk away, to acknowledge damage, is often viewed as weakness. This mentality has slowed the adoption of safety measures, delayed treatment, and left countless fighters vulnerable. Yet change is emerging. Some gyms now limit sparring rounds, enforce rest periods after knockouts, and employ strict concussion protocols. Athletic commissions are implementing stricter medical screenings. Fighters themselves are beginning to recognize the importance of preservation, not just for longevity in the sport, but for life after the ring. Preventing the next generation. Modern science is clear: fewer repeated blows mean lower risk. Protective gear, better medical oversight, and early education can reduce long-term harm. Youth boxing programs now emphasize technique and fitness over sheer contact. The hope is that tomorrow's champions may step into the ring with skill, not just courage, and leave with their brains intact. Up-and-coming fighters like Zach Evans exemplify this new generation. Young boxers are increasingly combining technical precision, strategic sparring, and smart fight planning to minimize unnecessary punishment. Alongside others like him, they are redefining what it means to fight effectively while preserving their long-term health, proving that it is possible to thrill the crowds without sacrificing the brain. The paradox remains. Still, boxing is a sport of extremes. Every punch thrown is a negotiation with risk. The paradox endures. The very traits that create legends, courage, aggression, resilience, are the same ones that threaten their future. Science can inform, protect, and mitigate, but it cannot erase the inherent danger. As fighters take to the ring today, the lessons of the past loom large. Ali's tremor, Bruno's breakdowns, Benn's guilt, Hatton's demons, they are reminders that glory has a price. And though medicine may delay the cost, it cannot eliminate it entirely. Moving forward. For fans, trainers, and fighters alike, the challenge is clear: celebrate the art, admire the courage, but respect the science. Boxing can survive, even thrive, if the culture evolves alongside the medical knowledge. But only if the sport acknowledges the full truth: each punch leaves a mark, sometimes visible, often hidden, and always lasting. Chapter 5: Life After the Bell. When the spotlight fades. For every fighter, the moment they hang up their gloves is both an ending and a beginning. The crowd no longer roars. The bright lights of the arena are replaced by quiet streets, ordinary mornings, and the subtle ache of a body that has absorbed decades of punishment. For many, leaving boxing triggers an identity crisis. Fighters are conditioned to define themselves by their courage, their resilience, their ability to absorb punishment and rise again. Without the ring, that identity can crumble. The man who once commanded thousands of fans must now confront a quieter, more personal battlefield himself. Ricky Hatton. From hitman to survivor. Ricky Hatton's transition out of boxing was far from smooth. After the devastating defeats by Mayweather and Pacquiao, he sank into depression and substance abuse. "I felt like I'd lost more than fights. I'd lost myself. The people I'd been in the ring, the person everyone cheered for, he was gone. And suddenly I was just me. And I didn't like what I saw." Hatton eventually found recovery through therapy, family support, and coaching. He helped younger fighters navigate both the ring and life beyond it, teaching them that survival outside the ropes is just as important as survival within. Yet, in the end, his own fight for survival proved too much to bear. Frank Bruno. Reclaiming joy. Frank Bruno's journey was about rebuilding trust in himself and others. After his struggles with bipolar disorder and mental health crises, he embraced public speaking, charity work, and mentoring young athletes. "Boxing took a lot from me, but it also taught me resilience. Learning to live with my illness, to accept help, to be honest about my struggles, that became my fight. And winning that fight feels different, but it's just as important." Bruno's story illustrates a vital truth: the skills fighters learn in the ring, discipline, focus, endurance can be repurposed for life, if only they are given the support to do so. Nigel Benn. The burden of guilt. For some, like Nigel Benn, recovery is entwined with reconciliation. The memory of the fight with Gerald McClellan haunted him for years, a moral weight no victory could lighten. You can't undo what's happened. You can't take the punches back. But you can try to make something good of the rest of your life. That's all anyone can do. Benn turned to charity work and speaking engagements, sharing his story to educate young fighters about the mental and emotional toll of the sport. His recovery is ongoing, a reminder that some battles do not end with the final bell. Mental health and identity. Across boxing, the stories converge on a single theme: mental health is inseparable from physical health. Depression, anxiety, and substance abuse are common among retired fighters, often triggered by the loss of purpose, the lingering effects of head trauma, or the sudden absence of structure and routine. Psychologists emphasize that recovery requires more than medical treatment, it requires rebuilding identity. Fighters must learn to see themselves beyond the ring as fathers, mentors, coaches, or entrepreneurs. They must integrate their past, with all its pain and glory, into a sustainable sense of self. Finding new purpose. Some fighters discover purpose in mentoring the next generation. Others turn to commentary, coaching, charity, or business. Mike Tyson, for example, has embraced entertainment and public speaking, reframing his life in ways that allow him to remain connected to boxing while protecting his health. "Life after boxing is a different kind of fight," says one retired champion. "You're fighting for balance, for sanity, for happiness. And it's tougher than any opponent in the ring." The transition is never linear. Relapse, doubt, and struggle are common. But through support networks, therapy, and self-reflection, many fighters manage to create fulfilling lives, proving that resilience is not just about surviving a fight, but surviving a life. A human legacy. The stories of Hatton, Bruno, Benn, and countless others reveal a deeper truth: boxing is not just about the spectacle of violence or the glory of titles. It is about the people who inhabit that world, the courage required to face both opponents and the consequences of those encounters. Life after boxing is not about forgetting the past but reconciling with it. It is about learning to thrive in a quieter world, one without the roar of the crowd but full of its own challenges and victories. For those who navigate it successfully, it becomes the ultimate testament to the strength that boxing cultivated, not just physical, but emotional and moral resilience. Chapter 6: Boxing Forward, Safety, Strategy and the Next Generation. The ring is changing. Boxing has always been a sport defined by extremes, courage, risk, glory, and danger. But the landscape is shifting. Fighters, trainers, medical professionals, and regulators are increasingly aware of the long-term consequences of repeated head trauma. The challenge is balancing tradition with innovation, preserving the spectacle while protecting the athletes. Medical oversight and protocols. Modern commissions and boxing organizations now enforce stricter medical screenings, mandatory rest periods after knockouts, and limits on sparring intensity. Neurologists monitor fighters' cognitive health, and concussion protocols have become a central part of fight planning. While these measures cannot eliminate risk entirely, they represent a seismic cultural shift from the "shake it off" mentality that dominated the past. "We can't make boxing risk-free," says Dr. Laura Mitchell, a sports neurologist. "But we can reduce cumulative trauma, identify problems early, and give fighters the tools to protect themselves." The rise of smart fighters. The new generation of boxers exemplifies this approach. Fighters like Zach Evans are blending technical skill with strategic ring intelligence. They spar less aggressively, prioritize defense, and understand the importance of preserving their health over unnecessary punishment. This tactical approach does not diminish the sport's excitement. It transforms it. Fans still see knockout power and relentless aggression, but it is calculated and sustainable. Young boxers are also benefiting from data-driven training. Heart rate monitors, impact sensors, and video analysis allow coaches to design programs that maximize skill while minimizing damage. Nutrition, recovery protocols, and mental health support are now integral to a fighter's development. The sport is embracing science in ways that would have been unthinkable in Ali's era. Mentorship and education. Perhaps most importantly, veteran fighters are mentoring the next generation. Retired champions like Nigel Benn and Frank Bruno are teaching young athletes not only how to fight, but how to live afterward. They emphasize mental health, lifestyle balance, and the importance of life outside the ring. "We want fighters to leave the sport whole, not broken," Hatton said. "The fight isn't just in the ring, it's for your future, your family, your mind." Culture shift. This combination of science, mentorship, and strategy is slowly reshaping boxing culture. The old code of silence around injuries and mental health is being replaced by transparency and accountability. Fighters no longer have to hide concussions or depression. They are encouraged to seek help, and doing so is increasingly seen as strength rather than weakness. The paradox of progress. Despite progress, boxing will always carry risk. Every punch thrown is a negotiation with danger. The sport's essence, courage, risk, and resilience, cannot be removed. But by prioritizing education, prevention, and recovery, the next generation of fighters can achieve greatness without sacrificing their long-term health. Looking ahead. The future of boxing is a balancing act between spectacle and safety, tradition and science, courage and preservation. Fighters like Zach Evans and his peers represent hope to a generation that can thrill audiences, win titles, and remain intact after their careers. Ali's tremor in Atlanta remains a cautionary image, but it also serves as inspiration. Boxing can evolve. It can produce legends without destroying them. And with each measured step forward, the sport honors both its history and its humanity, proving that true greatness lies not only in what happens in the ring, but also in what fighters carry with them after the final bell. Dedication. To Ricky Hatton, 1978 to 2025. This book is for you, Ricky the Hitman, the people's champ, the fighter who carried not just his own dreams into the ring, but the hopes of an entire city, a nation even, in every punch, every roar, every triumph. You fought with courage, heart, and a joy that transcended the sport. You carried the weight of your battles in the ring and in life, with honesty and resilience, even when the world did not understand the toll they took. You showed us the glory of boxing, but also its cost, its humanity, and its heart. May this book honor your memory, your courage, and the lessons you gave us, that true strength is not measured only in victories, but in survival, in recovery, in the grace with which one faces the world after the lights fade. Rest in peace, Ricky. The crowd will always remember the hit man that was Hatton. Epilogue. Beyond the ropes. Boxing is a sport of extremes. It celebrates courage, endurance, and the thrill of the fight. It elevates men into legends, their names echoing in arenas, gyms, and living rooms around the world. But it also exacts a price, visible in bruises and broken bones, and invisible in tremors, memory lapses, and the quiet battles that follow long after the final bell. This book has traced that paradox through the lives of Muhammad Ali, Frank Bruno, Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank, Ricky Hatton, and a generation of fighters both past and present. We have seen triumph and tragedy, glory and sacrifice, the thrill of victory, and the haunting cost of every punch absorbed. Yet, amid the pain, there is hope. Modern science, evolving culture, and the new generation of fighters, smart, strategic, and supported show that greatness need not come at the expense of life itself. The ring can still be a stage for courage, skill, and spectacle, but now with awareness, protection, and respect for the body and mind that make it all possible. For those who step into the ring tomorrow, like Zach Evans and his peers, the lessons of the past are their inheritance. They inherit both the glory and the cautionary tales. They inherit the triumphs and the tragedies. And with each step, they carry forward a sport that is learning, slowly but surely, to honor both its champions and their humanity. Boxing will always demand courage. It will always reward risk. But it is also a testament to resilience, recovery, and the human spirit. The fighters we have met in these pages living and gone remind us that the true fight is not only in the ring, but in life itself, to survive, to endure, and to find meaning beyond the ropes. And so, the story continues. Every punch thrown, every round fought, every fighter who dares to dream is part of a legacy larger than themselves, a legacy of courage, of heart, and of the enduring pursuit of greatness, tempered by wisdom, care, and the knowledge that life after the bell is just as precious as the moments beneath it.